She walked into the store like she had done 100 times before. The security cameras captured every move. Pushing open the glass door, walking down the snack aisle, pausing at the register. 5 minutes inside. 1 bottle of water. Pack of gum. Then she headed toward the exit. And that was it. She was never seen again. No struggle. No screams. No witnesses. She simply disappeared. But the truth? The truth was far worse than anyone could have imagined. Lisa Thornton's day had been completely normal. It was Thursday, October 12, 2023, a mild autumn afternoon in Franklin, Tennessee. A quiet town, the kind where neighbors knew each other's names, and where people still left their doors unlocked at night. Lisa had been a schoolteacher for nearly a decade, adored by her second-grade students at Willow Creek Elementary. She had a steady routine, one that never changed. School ended at 3:30 p.m. She stayed an extra hour to grade papers, then headed home. But that day, she made one stop first. At 4:46 p.m., she pulled into the Brookmart convenience store, a small, family-run shop on the corner of Willow Avenue. The store's security footage captured everything, at least what little there was to see. Lisa stepped inside, wearing a burgundy sweater, dark jeans, and a black crossbody bag. She went straight to the refrigerator aisle, grabbed a bottle of water, and picked up a pack of gum near the checkout. At 4:50 p.m., she handed a $5 bill to the cashier, a young man named Derek Reed, who later told police she was polite but otherwise unremarkable. She placed her change in her bag, gave a small smile, and walked toward the door. At 4:51 p.m., she reached for the handle, and then nothing. Lisa Thornton vanished. When the store owner, Jim Callahan, locked up that night, he noticed Lisa's car was still parked outside. He thought it was odd but assumed maybe she had stepped away for a moment. Maybe she had met someone. Maybe she had gone for a walk. By the next morning, the car was still there. The sun had risen, store employees had arrived, customers had come and gone. But the silver Honda Accord never moved. At 7:30 a.m., a police officer on patrol noticed the car, ran the plates, and saw it was registered to Lisa Thornton. When he knocked on the driver's side window, he found Lisa's purse still in the front seat, her keys still in the ignition, but Lisa was nowhere to be found. By 8 a.m., Lisa's principal called her home phone after she failed to show up for work. No answer. Then she called Lisa's best friend, Sarah Powell, who immediately knew something was wrong. "She's never late," Sarah told police later. "If she was sick, she would have texted me." Something wasn't right. At 8:27 a.m., Sarah drove to Lisa's apartment. Her car wasn't there. Her front door was locked. There was no sign that Lisa had ever come home the night before. By 9 a.m., her family reported her missing. By 9:30 a.m., police were reviewing the Brookmart surveillance footage. By 10 a.m., they realized something wasn't adding up. The store's indoor cameras showed Lisa walking inside, picking up her items, paying at the register, and walking toward the exit. But then something odd. The outdoor cameras should have captured her leaving the store, walking to her car, opening the driver's side door, and pulling out of the lot. But they didn't. Instead, there was a 3-minute gap in the footage. At 4:50 and 59 seconds p.m., Lisa is visible inside, walking toward the glass doors. At 4:51 and 3 seconds p.m., she is still in motion, reaching for the handle. At 4:51 and 7 seconds p.m., the screen flickers. At 4:51 and 12 seconds p.m., she is gone. No figure outside. No shadow passing the camera. No sign that she ever left. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. By noon, a full investigation was underway. Police sealed off the Brookmart parking lot. They combed through Lisa's apartment, her classroom, her phone records. Her car was towed for forensic examination. Detectives found no signs of struggle in or around the store. Her car was clean, no fingerprints besides her own. Her purse contained her wallet, cash, credit cards, and phone, meaning robbery wasn't a motive. No one inside the store remembered anything unusual. And yet, Lisa Thornton had disappeared in a matter of seconds, with zero witnesses and no explanation. Then, an eerie discovery. At 2:37 a.m., nearly 10 hours after Lisa was last seen, her phone pinged one last time. The location, a rural highway 40 miles away. A long, empty stretch of road cutting through dense woods. A place with no houses, no streetlights, no reason for Lisa to be there. By the time police arrived, the phone was gone. Only the silence of the dark woods remained. And Lisa was still missing. It didn't make sense. Women don't just disappear in broad daylight. Not without a trace. Unless someone made them. 1 minute. That's all it took for Lisa Thornton to vanish. 1 minute she was walking out of a store. The next she was gone. Her car was still in the parking lot. Her purse, her phone, her wallet. Everything was there, except her. And when her phone pinged nearly 40 miles away, deep in the middle of nowhere, investigators realized they weren't just dealing with a disappearance. They were dealing with something far worse. At 2:37 a.m., Lisa's phone pinged on a rural stretch of Route 19, a desolate two-lane road surrounded by dense woods. The location made no sense. Lisa had no reason to be out there, and she certainly hadn't driven herself. By 3 a.m., officers arrived at the exact coordinates of the last ping. Their headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the endless rows of trees lining the shoulder of the road. The silence was overwhelming. Then they saw something. A cell phone screen face down on the pavement, its blue light still glowing. One of the officers bent down and picked it up. The lock screen was visible. A simple black and white photo of Lisa and her younger brother from years ago. It was her phone, and she was nowhere to be found. The officers swept the area, but there were no footprints, no signs of a struggle, no tire marks leading into the woods. Nothing but the stillness of the trees. Yet something about the road felt wrong. It wasn't a road that people casually drove on at that hour. There were no houses for miles, no stores, no gas stations. Whoever had taken Lisa, or wherever Lisa had gone, she hadn't left her phone there herself. By 10 a.m., Lisa's disappearance was all over the news. Franklin, Tennessee was not the kind of town where people went missing. It was a safe place, a place where everyone knew everyone. But suddenly, everyone was afraid. Sheriff Daniel Briggs held a press conference that afternoon, standing stiffly at a podium outside the station. His face was grim. "We are working around the clock to locate Lisa Thornton. At this time, we have no suspects and no evidence of foul play. We urge anyone who may have seen something to come forward immediately." No evidence of foul play, but behind him, the officers knew the truth. Lisa hadn't just walked away. Every investigator knew that the first 48 hours were crucial in missing person cases. The longer someone was missing, the lower the chances of finding them alive. And so the search began. Helicopters scanned the woods off Route 19, searching for movement. Officers knocked on doors, questioning every resident near Brookmart. FBI analysts reviewed the missing surveillance footage, trying to find any digital traces. But hour after hour passed, and still nothing. Then, at 7:12 p.m., Lisa's best friend, Sarah Powell, received a text message from an unknown number. Contained just 4 words. "Help me, it's dark." Sarah's heart stopped when she saw the message. Her hands shook as she immediately dialed the number. The line rang once, twice, then it went dead. Sarah grabbed her keys and sped to the police station. Bursting through the doors, the phone still clutched in her trembling fingers. "She just texted me. Lisa just texted me." Within minutes, detectives traced the phone number. The signal? It was coming from an abandoned house, an old, crumbling building deep in the woods, 10 miles outside of town. And police were already on their way. At 8:03 p.m., a convoy of police vehicles turned onto a dirt path leading into the forest. Their headlights cast long shadows against the trees. The house stood at the end of the road, a 2-story farmhouse, its roof sagging, its windows shattered. It had been empty for decades, but inside, something or someone was waiting. The officers stepped out, weapons drawn. "Lisa?" No response. Then a noise, a faint tapping sound coming from inside. One of the officers stepped forward, his radio crackling. He placed his hand on the rotting wooden door, and then slowly he pushed it open. What they found inside would change everything. The door creaked open, revealing nothing but darkness. The air was thick with dust, the scent of rot clinging to every surface. Officers stepped inside, their flashlights cutting through the blackness. And then one of them stopped. Something was on the floor, a trail of red smears leading toward the stairs. And just beyond that, the outline of a single pale hand. The abandoned farmhouse had been empty for decades, but as the officers moved through the rooms, it was clear. Someone had been here recently. The furniture was covered in sheets, but footprints disturbed the thick dust on the floor. A rusty lantern sat on the kitchen table, its wick still warm. Someone had lit it not long ago. Officer Darren Cole swept his light across the floor. His voice was steady, but low. "We've got blood." A trail of dark red smears, partially dried, led toward the narrow staircase at the back of the house. It disappeared into the shadows above. But there was something else. On the wall, written in large, uneven handwriting, were 3 words. "No police. No police." The officers froze. Was Lisa still in the house? Was someone in there with her? Then a noise. A slow, deliberate creak from the floorboards upstairs. Someone was moving. The team signaled to each other, weapons drawn. The old wooden staircase groaned under their weight as they ascended, step by step, toward the sound. The upstairs hallway was lined with 3 doors. 2 were open, revealing dusty, empty rooms. The third, closed. Officer Cole gestured to the others, reaching for the rusted doorknob. He twisted it and pushed. The door swung open, revealing a small, windowless room. And in the middle of the floor, a chair. A single wooden chair with something tied to the back. A cell phone. Lisa's cell phone. But Lisa wasn't there. The officers scanned the room. Nothing else seemed disturbed. No sheets, no blankets, no ropes, no sign that anyone had been restrained. So why had Lisa's phone been left behind like that? Then one of the officers' radios crackled. "We just received another text from Lisa's phone." Cole's stomach dropped. How? Her phone was right there, in front of them. Back at the station, Lisa's best friend Sarah had just received another text message. 4 words. "Don't open the door." The timestamp? 8:47 p.m. But Lisa's phone was sitting inside that abandoned house. Unplugged. Turned off. It wasn't Lisa sending those messages. And whoever was, they were watching. By now, the investigation had become something else entirely. This wasn't just a disappearance. This was calculated. Someone had been toying with them, leading them to dead ends, watching them react. And then the FBI analyst handling Lisa's phone records noticed something chilling. This wasn't the first time that phone had pinged from an abandoned location. It had happened before. Twice. Months ago. 2 other women had disappeared in the same way. Vanishing from public places. Phones pinging from abandoned buildings before going silent. Neither of them had ever been found. And now Lisa had joined their ranks. News of the abandoned house and the mysterious text messages had spread like wildfire. Was Franklin dealing with a serial predator? The town wasn't safe anymore. Residents began locking their doors long before sundown. Families refused to let their children walk alone. Stores installed more security cameras overnight. And at the center of it all, Lisa Thornton's name was everywhere. But the most unsettling part? She was still out there. Somewhere. And the person who had taken her wasn't finished yet. The police had followed the clues. They had tracked the phone. They had searched the house. And yet, Lisa was still missing. Because someone wanted it that way. And soon they were going to send another message. One that no one would be able to ignore. At exactly 3 a.m., Sarah's phone buzzed. She sat up, heart pounding, knowing before she even looked. Another message had come through. But this time it wasn't just words. It was a picture. And the moment she saw it, she felt her entire body go cold. Because Lisa was in it. Sarah's hands trembled as she held her phone closer. The image was grainy, but undeniable. Lisa, sitting in a dark room, eyes wide, mouth slightly open as if caught mid-breath. She looked alive, but something was wrong. Her shoulders were tense, her posture unnatural, as if she was being forced to sit still. And in the background, just barely visible in the shadows, a figure, not fully in frame, not showing their face, but they were watching her. Sarah gasped, her mind racing. Where was she? Who was with her? Then she noticed the caption beneath the photo. "Don't get too close." Sarah's stomach turned. This wasn't a ransom demand. It wasn't a confession. It was a warning. But from who? And why? By now, Lisa's case had grown too large for local police. The FBI had stepped in, poring over the digital footprint of every message, tracking Lisa's last movements frame by frame. Agent Mark Holloway stood over a desk filled with printed evidence. Maps, phone records, the chilling image of Lisa sent just hours before. The sender is using a rotating IP address, the tech analyst explained. They know exactly what they're doing. That meant one thing. Lisa's abductor wasn't some random criminal. They were organized, methodical, experienced, and that made them even more dangerous. As the agents pieced together the details, something clicked. This wasn't the first time someone had received cryptic messages after a disappearance. 2 other cases, months apart, same town, same method. Both victims had been young women who vanished in public places. Both of their phones had sent mysterious texts before being abandoned. Neither woman had ever been found. And now Lisa was the third. The realization hit hard. This wasn't just a kidnapping. It was a pattern. And whoever was behind it had been doing this for years. While the FBI was untangling the digital maze, a separate discovery sent the case hurtling forward. A security guard at an abandoned industrial site called in a tip. He had seen a car matching Lisa's last known location, parked near an old warehouse 2 nights ago. That was just hours after she vanished. Agents mobilized instantly. The warehouse was cold and empty, the floors covered in dust. But there was something out of place. A mattress, stained and worn, shoved into a back corner. A single water bottle half full. And near the wall, rope, recently cut. Lisa had been here, and now she was gone again. For the first time since Lisa's disappearance, the authorities had a concrete link. A location where she had been held. And something even more important. A partial fingerprint on the water bottle. It wasn't in the system, but it was a start. The FBI worked through the night, cross-referencing it against every known associate of Lisa, every past case, every unsolved crime in the region. Then, finally, a breakthrough. The print was a partial match to a man named Dale Grayson, a former truck driver. No serious criminal record, but something in his history stood out. Years ago, he had worked at a shipping facility near Franklin, Texas. The same place where one of the other missing women had last been seen. Connection. The FBI had a name, a face, and a history. Now they needed one more thing, his exact location. Somewhere out there, Lisa was still breathing, still waiting. And now, for the first time since she had vanished, someone was finally closing in on the person who had taken her. But time was running out, and the next message could be the last. The FBI had their suspect. They had his name, his face, a location that tied him to Lisa's disappearance. But one thing was missing, Lisa. And when the next message came through, it made one thing very clear. Time had run out. The moment Dale Grayson's name entered the investigation, everything shifted into motion. FBI agents tracked down his last known address. A small, isolated property in rural Texas, barely held together by rusting metal and rotting wood. Neighbors barely knew him. He kept to himself. No family, no close friends. But one detail stood out. He had a storage unit, rented under a different name just outside of town. The agents moved fast. No sirens, no warnings. They needed to catch him off guard. Because if Lisa was still alive, they were running out of time. The unit was located on the outskirts of Franklin, Texas. Remote, quiet, hidden. The owner barely remembered Grayson. He always paid in cash, never spoke more than a few words. The lock on the unit was new, the kind that only the owner could access. But the moment they cut it open, the stench hit them. A mix of mold, sweat, and something else. something worse. Inside, the unit was small and cramped. Cot in the corner, a bucket, pile of clothes, and a chair with frayed rope still tied to its legs. Lisa had been here, but was she still alive? Sarah's phone vibrated. She was sitting in the police station, surrounded by investigators. She hadn't moved in hours, watching them chase every lead, clinging to any hope that Lisa was still out there. And now another message had come through. She stared at the screen. No words this time, just a video. Sarah's hands shook as she pressed play. At first, it was completely dark, just a low, muffled sound. Breathing, then movement, a flash of blonde hair, a hand, barely visible in the dim light. Lisa, she was alive. Sarah could hear her crying, weak, exhausted. But then a voice, low, raspy, "Time's up." And just like that, the screen went black. The video was sent from a burner phone, a last-ditch move by Grayson. But the FBI had one shot tracing the cell tower that had sent the message. It pinged a rural highway 20 miles south, not far from the storage unit. If they moved now, they could catch him before he disappeared for good. The old truck stop had been abandoned for years. Grayson's car was parked behind it, engine still warm. Agents surrounded the building, weapons drawn. A creaking door, the sound of something being dragged. Then a scream, Lisa's scream. The agents moved in fast, storming through the decayed remains of the building. And there, in the back room, Lisa, tied to a chair, terror in her eyes. And behind her, Grayson, a knife in his hand. "You don't understand," he muttered, voice shaking. "This isn't what it looks like." But it was exactly what it looked like. An agent shouted for him to drop the knife. For a second, he hesitated, glancing between Lisa and the door. Then he ran. But there was nowhere to go. Within seconds, he was on the ground, face pressed to the dirt, hands wrenched behind his back. Lisa was safe, and Grayson was finally caught. Lisa's ordeal had lasted 6 days. 6 days of being moved from place to place, blindfolded, tied up, left in complete darkness. Grayson had been watching her for weeks before he took her, studying her routine, choosing the exact moment when she would be most vulnerable. But Lisa survived, and now she was the only known victim to make it out alive. After his arrest, Grayson refused to speak. But the evidence was overwhelming, and when the FBI searched his property, they found something even worse. Old videotapes, hundreds of them, some dating back years, some showing women who were never found. Lisa had been one of many, but she had been the only one to escape. With Grayson in custody, the FBI continued their search, for bodies, for other victims, for answers. But one question remained. Lisa's final video, the one sent to Sarah just before the rescue. Who sent it? Because by the time they found Grayson, his phone was already destroyed. He hadn't sent that message. So who did? And more importantly, why? Lisa was lucky. She survived. But how many others didn't? And how many more are still waiting, somewhere out there, to be found?